Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
I am so grateful to be with you here today, speaking from the territories of the Lekwungen peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. Joining us today is somebody who we have grown to love so much over the last few months, and that is our ASL translator, Nigel Howard. Just so you know, I asked Nigel what his favorite BC fruit and vegetable was before we started this, and he told me that his favorite fruit is, wait for it, BC cherries, and he shares that with our premier. His favorite vegetable is BC wild mushrooms. Such a good choice. So thank you to Nigel for being here. It's just such a pleasure to see you on the screen. I also have two amazing guests with me today. I have Chef Ned Bell, who is the general manager and executive chef with the Naramata Inn that has just gone through is going through a tender loving care process and newly open for business once again. He's also the Ocean Wise ambassador. And we have the incredible farmer Parm Baines, owner of Westbury Farms in Abbotsford. We're going to be talking about the province's food system and how important that is, the importance of buying fresh, local BC products, food, beverages, processed goods. This last few months, while we've all been dealing with COVID-19, it has really made a lot of us put a huge focus on the need for the province to become more resilient, more self-sufficient, more sustainable. We are seeing an enormous wave of support from British Columbians from one end of the province to the other that want a strong food supply. They want a resilient food system. We've known over the last 3 months that British Columbians have made it very clear that they are passionate about BC's food system, and you want to be part of the solution. So, that is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to have a series of questions that have been sent in to us. And we've received a lot of questions with the same themes. And so we've organized those to make sure that we're covering off as many of the questions as we possibly can. For those of you who were not able to send a question in prior to this, we are taking questions if you submit them on the comment section of the live Facebook event, which we're doing, and we will try and get to those the best that we can. If you can't stay for the whole time, we'll be posting this entire event on Facebook later today, so you can watch it when you do have time. So with that, I'm very excited to turn it over to our two guests. And they're going to say a few opening words, and then we'll get into some questions. So first, we're going to start with incredible farmer Parm Baines.
Mr. Poppin, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Just a little bit about our operation. Westbury Farms is a family-owned operation. It's vertically integrated. We bought our blueberry farm here in Abbotsford in 1989, and then set up Westbury Farms as the processing packing facility in 1995. We started out marketing to the local trade, and then went national after a couple of years, and then over the next few years have gone global. We service over 10 countries, and the U.S. remains our largest customer. The industry itself, BC, produces 95% of the high bush blueberries, and it's in the top 5 highest producing regions. And of course, with that, blueberries are available year-round during the summer period, July, August, September. BC is producing, and then off-season in the fall, you have the Southern Hemisphere supplying blueberries year-round to us. And just a little bit on what's been happening with the COVID-19 situation. We are preparing for the season, setting up our guidelines and protocols. And of course, there are a lot of challenges. It's a moving target with new guidelines coming in every few weeks and adjusting to that. And one of our few of our challenges are the labor situation, and if we're going to be able to get enough pickers, and then of course the temporary foreign workers. There's been a cutback on that, and then God forbid if we ever get an outbreak, it's such a short season for us, we wouldn't be able to afford that, and our growers wouldn't be either. They wouldn't be able to ship to other facilities because we'll all be running at maximum capacity. That's it for now.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Parm. There are challenges this year that we certainly didn't expect, but I know even if it was a normal year, this is an incredibly busy time for you. So thank you for sharing some of your time today. So Ned, tell us about you.
Well, good afternoon, Minister. How are you? What a pleasure to be here today with you and with so many British Columbians who have tuned in. Of course, world famous blueberry farmer Parm. I'm powered by blueberries most days, Parm. So thank you very much. BC blueberries, of course. As a chef, we've gone through some extraordinary times in the last number of weeks and months. My peers across this province have really struggled in their businesses. There's been a multitude of issues that have faced my peers across the province and really across the country. I'm excited with the project that we're about to open here. Actually, we're opening our business this Friday, followed by another piece of our business towards the end of the month. But we've had a rough go of trying to sort out exactly the how and the what and the where of an operation, a brand new operation. Although our Naramata Inn is 112 years old, we've gone through the last 16 weeks of renovations to bring it back to life and really celebrate this region. Hyper focus on Naramata, hyper focus on the season of Naramata, but then of course celebrate the Okanagan, celebrate British Columbia. And all the while, whether it's a fisher or a farmer, an artisan, a processor, a grower, what is on my menus really comes from the people that I care deeply about. And, my food is only delicious if I have a great relationship with a farmer. And as Minister Popham loves to say, every chef needs a farmer and every farmer needs a chef.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ned. And I know because you've been doing this enormous renovation and you are getting ready to open on Friday, every second of your time is valuable. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate it. So now we're going to move into questions that have been sent to us over the last week as we've been getting ready for this event. And I'm just going to ask my assistant, Jason, to put one up on the screen for me here. So our first question comes from Trish from Campbell River. And Trish wants to know, what can British Columbians do to support BC farmers through this difficult time? So it's quite interesting to have that question first, because that's probably the most common question I've been asked over the last 3 months. British Columbians really do want to support our farming industry, our fishing industry, and they just need to know what steps they can do to make sure that happens. So, of course, one of the big things you can do is to make sure you're buying BC products. And although we are in the beginning of a lot of the seasons for fruits and vegetables, we're very lucky in our province that we produce a lot of commodities here. So we have over 200 land-based commodities and over 100 come from the sea. And so at any time of year, you can support BC farmers and fishers and food processors because we have so much to choose from. I'm going to let Parm talk a little bit about how you can buy blueberries, for example, all year long.
Yes, thank you. So the simple answer is support us by buying local. As Minister Popham said, that there are a lot of different products available that are produced here in BC. And you can buy those at the retail grocery store outlets, farm markets, farm stands, e-commerce, and any other type of platform that is available. Buy BC is a great program that promotes locally produced products through the Buy BC logo. And we ourselves partner with Save On Foods and sell into their BC stores and into Western Canada with over 150 stores. And through that, we're supporting about 600 blueberry growers. We purchase blueberries from about 100 growers from throughout the valley, and there are a family of growers that we support, and very proud of doing that.
That's incredible. We have been pushing very hard to make sure that the Buy BC logo is apparent on as many goods as we can get it on. And so it just makes that choice really easy for consumers. They don't have to try and figure out where the product's from. You can just look for the Buy BC logo and you know that it's produced by a farmer or a fisher right here in our province. And the money that you spend on that product circulates back into our communities. So you can buy BC goods at farmers markets, of course, right now. Many of them are opening up again. And we have sponsored some programs for the farmers markets that is making it easier for consumers to purchase things online. So as Parm mentioned, the e-commerce program is fantastic. I went down to the Moss Street Market in my area just on the weekend. And it's quite interesting on how farmers markets have changed during this COVID-19. We see a lot of spacing that's happening for customers. The lineups look long, but they're actually just spaced out a lot to make sure that people are safe. You go up to a vendor and they fill a bucket for you with the goods that you're pointing to. And then you are asked to fill your bags yourself. So there is very few touch points that happen. I'm just so proud of everybody who's had to become quite creative to make sure that this is done in a safe way. And there's also food depots where you just pull up to the same farmer's market and you've pre-ordered your food and you just pick up your bags of goods. And so we've tried to support making it easier, to make it safer, and to make as many choices as possible to continue to get those goods out into the community. Ned, do you want to make a comment about what it means to buy BC products and how you access them and how you get to know farmers in your business?
Absolutely. Thank you, Minister. Well, as a chef, what I'm always trying to do is limit the links between the artisan, the farmer, the fisher, the processor, and my kitchens. And so we really want to focus on those first relationships, those direct relationships. And, I've been supporting community-supported fisheries, CSA farm boxes, direct to rancher, chicken farmer, turkey farmer, duck farmer, pig farmer for a long, long time in my kitchens. But I always look for local first. If I can find it in my own backyard, I want to celebrate that, whether that's a regional conversation, whether it's the village of Naramata, the South Okanagan and beyond. But, I was born in the Okanagan, but raised down on the coast. And so I spent 10 years in Victoria as a young boy and then the rest of my life in Vancouver. And I've been cooking for now 30 years. And so what's always been very important to my peers is we want to look for the local products that are in season first, as we then, begin our recipe development or our basket, as you were, when it comes to our recipes. And really that translates into me as a father as well at home. I always try and make sure my children understand where their ingredients are coming from. And Daddy might be a chef, but really at the end of the day, I'm a tradesman. I'm a proud, the proud product of a home economics teacher. And so if it's BC food on the plate and it's something that I'm celebrating with my family and the people that we love, it often tastes better, of course, but we also know that we're contributing to the province and to the region.
That's great. Yeah. So we know there's many, many ways for us to access BC goods, and it might just take a little bit of extra effort sometimes. But even on the off season, getting back to berries, for example, we may not see fresh blueberries in our grocery stores, but you can always find them in the freezer department. And I think once we wrap our heads around eating what's available at the time of year that it is available, it just makes it so much easier. You can menu plan at home for those sorts of things. So Parm, this is going to be a question that's coming in, and I know you're going to know the answer to this one. Our second question comes from Lori from Nanaimo. Will you pick berry farms be allowed to open for the strawberry season or blueberry season? I added that part in, which is coming quickly. So tell us about how UPick is going to work this year.
Minister, in fact, the strawberries are upon us. They're about 5 days early. And with new varieties being planted, it's extending our season. I was surprised myself to learn that it's normally middle of June when we start harvesting strawberries. And so I spoke to Alf Krause. He has a large operation in Langley there. And they have opened up. And of course, as long as you follow the guidelines and protocols set by the provincial health officer, you can set up your pick operation. And what he's doing is, rather than selling by weight, he's selling by volume. And he will have his own containers. And so nobody is allowed to bring containers from home. And through this means, he's also able to cut back on lines. And the strawberry industry, it's gone from the 1980s, from producing 20 million pounds. The province now produces about 3.5 million pounds, and 95% are sold in the fresh market. And competing with California strawberries, we command, good to know, that about a 60% higher price. BC strawberries, you can't beat the taste. They're just so wonderful.
Absolutely. I've already had some fresh strawberries from the Saanich Peninsula this year, and the flavor's outstanding. They, the ones that you can buy that are imported into our province, they look like they're going to be great, but often the flavor is just not there. It's not the same as having a BC strawberry. Yeah. So I think that the UPick question, the answer is that farmers are working very hard to have the correct protocols in place to keep customers safe and the farmers who farm on those farms safe as well. And so you'll see hand sanitizing stations, etc. So I think people should feel confident that they can go out and pick as many berries as they want. So our third question is coming from Aaron, asking about the labor shortage in BC. Can BC residents volunteer their time to help harvest? Harm, what do you think about that?
Well, absolutely. It's an area that we're really concerned with. Our temporary foreign workers our program, just with the challenges, with all the paperwork and the red tape, I think we're going to be down by 50%. We normally have about 50 individuals. We've brought in 7 and hoping to bring in another 5 or 6, and then try to hopefully make up from the local population. But, it's the elderly population that are picking blueberries and other berry crops, especially the elderly Indo-Canadian population workers. And a lot of them go to India in the wintertime and are stuck there. So that's another challenge for us. And we're working hard with our ministers, politicians, to see how we can bring them back as quickly as possible. The blueberry season, as we mentioned, strawberry season is upon us, and blueberries will be starting in about the third week of June.
Mm-hmm. So we do see that labor is a major issue for us this year in British Columbia. Involved in agriculture, fish, and processing, we have about 63,000 British Columbians who are involved in that sector. It's a very large job generator. But on top of that, we can bring in up to 12,000 workers from outside of British Columbia as well. We have quite a great relationship with Mexico. We bring in about 6,000, if all goes well, 6,000 workers from Mexico who do jobs from vineyards to greenhouses to picking. We have had challenges, of course, this year. We also bring in workers from Jamaica. But one of the things that we've been able to do, we've had to work out a way to bring workers in and keep them safe. So we had to introduce a quarantine period. So when the workers arrive at the Vancouver airport, they go into a quarantine in an accommodation in the Lower Mainland for 14 days. The federal government has stepped in to pay for some of the costs that they would normally be working for that 2-week period, up to $1,500. Our province has covered the accommodation and the food costs of that 14-day period, just to make sure that people are they're healthy when they come out of that quarantine period before they're entering into communities around the province. And so I think our province were leaders in that way. You see other provinces having some challenges right now with workers and COVID-19. So I feel like that's been an important and critical step, but it's also slowed things down. And so we have a challenge before us that we don't have as many foreign workers coming in than what we need. We're quite dependent on this workforce. And we are trying to entice British Columbians to get into agricultural, fish, and processing jobs. In fact, we just launched a website that is called bcagjobs.gov.bc.ca. And it's a place where you can find work. There's probably about 600 jobs listed there right now, from pickers to forklift drivers to agrologists, you name it. There's possibilities like crazy. And so we're really hoping that people in British Columbia want to get involved in the agriculture, food, and fish workforce. And so we're trying to make it as easy as possible. It's the first time we've had a website like this, and I think it's going to be good for the industry. It's not a quick fix, though. It doesn't happen overnight. So it's going to take everybody making sure that they're pushing this and telling people who may not think that they could be involved in the agriculture industry or fishing industry that there's a lot of jobs that they might be interested in. And I can tell you that I constantly say this: the agriculture industry, the food industry in general, the fishing industry, it's a very cool place to work. I was a farmer for a decade. I loved every minute of it. Since I've become a politician, I've had clean fingernails, which seems bizarre to me, but nothing makes me happier than getting out. I had a vineyard, I had a vegetable business. It's tough work, but you feel great at the end of the day, and you've really contributed to our food system in BC. So I'm really hoping that we can see more people moving into that workforce. Ned, what do you think? Because you're probably up against labor challenges as well.
Yeah, we certainly are. Thank you, Minister. Not only in our industry, of course, in some of the direct relationships we have with farmers. I was visiting some of my farmers in Armstrong yesterday, went on a bit of a road trip just to really put my boots on the ground, and they're definitely struggling. Some of my vineyard partners, are struggling with some workforce challenges. The restaurant business constantly struggles with workforce challenges, and so we're always looking for innovative ways. Ian Tostenson from the BC Restaurant Association is a great partner of our industry, and is working tirelessly with our friends in the restaurant business as we and of course in the hotel business, because there's a lot of connection between those two businesses as we try and unpack where potential workers are. And then, really we'll also work on training programs so we can continue to inspire people to get into the service business. It is such a rewarding business. I am so fortunate to get to do what I love every single day. And, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a tradesperson. I, went to culinary school to be a cook. I love cooking. And, I think we need to maybe bring people back to the appreciation that working with your hands is just so valuable.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Exactly. Well, that job site is live now, and I know we've had thousands of people over the last week since it launched go take a look. And so I'm hoping to get some good reports out of that soon. We have a question that's coming in from Julie in Langford, who says, I've noticed shelves in large grocery stores, they're looking bare, and it concerns me as I imagine much of our food comes from outside of British Columbia. Do we have enough food provincially to provide for our families, specifically in the winter? I'm starting to get scared that I cannot afford to stockpile supplies. So I can tell you, you can be confident that our food system is intact. We are not going to see a food shortage. A lot of what we saw of the pandemic was that people were afraid. They were afraid that there was that possibility that we could run out of food. And really, we saw people shopping, I'll say, a little bit too enthusiastically. And so the shelves were bare because there had been a change in the consumer behavior, and it took a while for retailers to adapt to that. It wasn't that we were running out, it's just that we couldn't get them stocked in time. And so as we've seen people relax a little bit more over the last little while, you'll see those shelves are beginning to look normal again. But I think it's really important in a time of crisis like we've just gone through, is to know that BC's food system is sound. Parm, would you like to talk about the amount of blueberries or berries that get frozen over the winter that we are still trying to sell right now?
Absolutely. One of the good things that have come out of this, we're talking about the bare frozen shelves and all that, since March, with the closure of restaurants and hotels and other food facilities and forcing individuals to cook at home, we've seen huge demand in purchase of frozen blueberries. And
that's
so
me, Parm. That's me.
Yeah. So that's really helped our industry, because last year we had a bumper crop. It was over 200 million pounds. Of course, we don't consume all of that in Canada or BC. A large percentage of that ends up in the U.S. market and offshore Europe and Asian markets. But that was a real help that we were carrying over a significant amount of frozen inventory, and in the last 2 months basically depleted. And so our freezers are basically empty, ready for the coming season. The coming season looks like to be another strong crop, and looking forward to it. And so one thing with the labor shortage we're going to see is there's going to be a lot more mechanical harvesting. And with mechanical harvesting, there's more fruit that goes in the frozen segment. And we keep our fingers crossed that we're able to process all of that. And with raspberries and strawberries, as I mentioned, it's basically consumed fresh, 95%. The raspberries, a lot of it ends up in the processed frozen juice segment, some polybagging. The cranberries, that's basically controlled by Ocean Spray, and a bulk of it is into the juice segment, and the other portion is into the dried sugar-infused cranberries. So on the berry sector, things are looking good so far.
So you feel like our food system is sound as well?
Absolutely.
That's great. I'm going to move now to a question from Daryl, who's in the live chat. I do worry about the diversity of our crops. Do we just focus a lot on monocropping, or is our local food system diverse? It's such a great question. I did mention that we grow over 200 land-based crops, and 100 different things come from the ocean around us. But I think I'm going to turn this one over to Ned, because Ned, you are an amazing chef, and you really try and source things that people might recognize, but you also source things that people might not recognize, and they're trying for the first time. Do you want to talk about the diversity?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I feel like we live in the best province on the planet, let alone the best province in the country. We have so much choice in this place that we get to call home. I mean, my menus change constantly. I'm very fortunate to be able to inspire people to choose different things, whether it's from the ocean or their own backyards. And by backyard could be, the breadbasket of the Fraser Valley or the Cowichan Valley or the Okanagan Valley. I wrote a cookbook recently, and in that cookbook, we celebrated 40 species that swim in the Pacific Ocean. And I had to whittle it down to 40 species because, of course, there's hundreds, if not thousands of things in the oceans, lakes, and rivers that we could celebrate and that we should celebrate to put a little less pressure on some of the species that we really consume almost exclusively. When it comes to the vegetables, the fruits, the things that are grown for us, harvested for us in this province, they are so vast. I think part of it is that a lot of British Columbians and Canadians, maybe as humans are creatures of habit, right? And so sometimes we like what we like, and of course we're all the same. I'm a creature of habit too, but I would challenge people to use this time where we might be cooking a little bit more at home, and this very challenging time that we're all facing, and maybe try a few new things that might spice up your recipes and inspire your children and your families and your neighbors to try a few new flavors. I remember a few years ago when Prince William and Princess Kate were here, they had gooey duck for the first time, and that was pretty exciting for them to try.
That is so true. It's interesting when we think about the diversity of products and what is old is new again. And when I say that, I'm thinking about rutabagas. So rutabaga is known as a quite old-fashioned vegetable, but it's absolutely delicious. And we grow a lot of them over in Delta on the Lower Mainland. And so we have a lot of diversity, but we also have the old standbys that are coming back as people become more aware of what's out there. But I think we are creatures of habit, and we get used to just serving the same things. And so I like to challenge people to say, you know what, on your plates this week, try 3 new vegetables from British Columbia. It's not hard because we have a lot of them to offer out there. Even if it's just a different color of lettuce that we're trying. Lettuce seems like it may not be have that much variety and flavor, but they really do. They have an interesting flavor and texture. And you can find a ton of them at the farmers markets right now. So we have a question. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a little trick, even for myself as a chef, when I go into the grocery store, I leave 3 lines blank at the bottom of my list, and I try and fill it with things I've never tried before.
I love it. Okay. We'll challenge people who are watching today to try that out too. That's a great idea. I have a question coming in from Tess in Vancouver. As a key lesson of the COVID-19 pandemic, how can the BC government invest in, grow, and build on efforts to relocalize and strengthen the BC food system moving forward? So again, that's an excellent question. And I can say that what we've been doing up until the pandemic gives us a framework to move forward and maybe to move forward more quickly. One of the things I'd like to talk about is a program that we have going called Feed BC. And this really speaks to exactly what Tess from Vancouver is talking about. So we are trying to move more grown and processed food through our hospital systems. And that's because the hospital system has a customer base, a patient base, that's enormous. And so it's a very stable domestic market for us to move goods through. And we started doing this in Penticton, actually, at the hospital 2.5 years ago. And we made an agreement with Interior Health that they would try and source more BC goods. So they started with BC eggs. And so before we knew it, all of a sudden they were using over 600,000 shelled eggs from British Columbia, where they might not have made those purchases from British Columbia before. So that makes an enormous difference. They've made partnerships with farmers with greenhouses around that hospital, so that those farmers are now supplying goods into the Penticton Hospital there. And then just a few months ago, we had an event actually with Parm in Fraser Health, where they were serving a dessert with BC blueberries on top of it. It was a cake that was made there, and it was served with BC blueberries. And so as we make those choices to support farmers with food purchases that we're doing anyway, like in our healthcare system, it creates this stable market. It's really important to do that right now because with the challenges with COVID-19, we see a lot of our international sales decreasing in a way we can't get the goods to other countries. It's changed things a lot. So we do have this power in domestic purchasing that we started 2.5 years ago, and we're just going to have to move forward and do that a lot more. And I think when we take primary goods and we add value to them, that's another way of increasing our food system and strengthening it. So we've been trying to set up what we're calling a food hub system, where it's shared space where food processors can do value adding and make the incredible products that they make. You'll see those at farmers markets, in grocery stores, and retailers, from foods to beverages. And so anywhere that we can take a primary product in BC and make sure it's getting the best value is one of the best ways we can support farmers. But it's all part of a food system. And I think that's the thing. It takes a work like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. But Parm, why don't you talk about the opportunities that could be there if you move more of your products through Fraser Health?
No, absolutely. No, we're very excited about that. We, in fact, have a few of the local processors that have availed themselves of that opportunity, and others are looking at it too. And you always talk about value added, and that's an exciting area for us to be expanding into. The frozen segment for us in the Canadian market isn't there. We're not able to compete shipping frozen blueberries to the bigger markets in Ontario and Quebec that utilize about 40-50 million pounds, and a lot of that comes from Michigan. And so we end up going down south, but it's an opportunity where if we can keep those berries at home, a certain percentage of it, and have the opportunity to expand our markets with the new consumer base.
Yeah, I think you and I were both very surprised that Fraser Health serves 50 million meals a year. So if every patient got a quarter cup of blueberries, that's a lot of blueberries that's moving. Right. Yeah. And Ned, it's an interesting thing thinking about the food system or the hospital system as restaurants, because we see that chefs are actually moving into the hospital system now and part of the planning for what patients' needs are. So could you have any comments about that, about the opportunities for food planning as a chef in a hospital?
Yeah, thank you, Minister. I sure do. My family has recently been spending some time in down on the coast at BC Cancer over the last few years with my wife. And what we've experienced is there's an incredible opportunity. There are some challenges, and we're actually working with a number of oncologists on developing a wellness campaign around food. Inherently, chefs are focused on wellness. We nourish people through how we feed them. And I think that chefs could be a real asset for the health minister, and also, people in general who are looking to consume more local products while they are healing. Real food heals. And if it is grown locally, in my own experience, it nourishes, it nurtures, and it allows the patient to come back to health faster and fiercer, as we say in my house. But certainly cooks and chefs could play a significant role in that journey.
That's so true. And as we put an emphasis on food processing goods specifically for institutions, it not only allows for us to have those opportunities right here in BC to supply that healthcare system, but it also gives us the opportunity to create products that can go outside of our province. And so it's an enormous job generator. And when you talk to people just generally around BC, if we should have more BC food in the hospital system, I've never heard anybody say no to that. Okay, so we're moving on to another question that's coming out of Facebook live chat. Most of the ag ministry programs are geared to large-scale farmers. What are you doing to help the smaller producers? Great question. So not all of our programs are geared toward large farmers. In fact, we've really spread things out, but I'll tell you about one specific program. It's a land matching program that we have. And so what we do is we have a database with people that own land that don't necessarily want to farm it anymore, or they're ready to retire, or they've never farmed this land. And we match it up with young people, new farmers who want to farm the land. And so it's run by a group that we work with called the Young Agrarians. And over the last 2 years, we have had enormous success with this. In fact, there's been thousands of acres that have been put back into production because of this model. And it's something that we're going to continue on with. We see the benefits of this increasing the output from these farms. We see a lot of mentorship happen. One of the problems with farmers retiring, of course, is the knowledge transfer that could be lost. And so we see mentors and mentees working on these pieces of property that are going back into production for the first time in a long time. And the people that are being attracted into this program as farmers may not be what you typically think a farmer would be. And so we see a lot of women between the ages of 30 and 40 that have gone and got their education. Maybe they've started their families, and all of a sudden they want to do something different. They want to get back to the land, and they want to be part of our food system. And so we see new faces of farmers too that you might not expect. We also, of course, support enormously our farmers markets, which are all over the province. And our Buy BC marketing program covers small and large, because the more that we can get that logo out there, the better for everybody. So that's how we're doing. We have so many programs. I could talk for hours and hours about what we're doing in the ministry, but I think I have to move on to a question from Teresa from Facebook Live chat. Would like to know. Oh, no, I've already done that. Sorry, it's Cami from Cobble Hill. Will there be any funding available for farmers markets? Interesting. Yes. So we are continuing to fund our e-commerce and our online farmers market program. Of course, we also partnered with the farmers markets with Buy BC. So we are able to send equipment to farmers markets so farmers can display what they have using Buy BC swag. We have aprons, and we've got bags that consumers can use, just to always constantly remind consumers that when they're making a purchase at a farmer's market or anywhere else, Save on Foods, as you mentioned, making that purchase means that someone in British Columbia, somewhere in a community, is feeling the benefits of that purchase. And I continue to say that, you know, we've got a tough road ahead of us because of this pandemic and when it hit. But as we say yes to buying BC food, our economic recovery can be a little bit more delicious if you choose British Columbia products. So I'm looking now to see where our next question is coming from. And I see Vanessa from Maple Ridge. Farming has been... Oh, sorry, no. I'm going to Jean in Qualicum, because I think we did cover off Vanessa's question. Okay, here is a very important question. I've been hearing about it for quite some time. Will Class D and E slaughter licenses be made available to all farmers across BC? So if there are problems at meat plants, the animals can be slaughtered on farm. So our meat regulations changed quite a few years ago, and we saw a decrease in the amount of rural production and slaughter that was happening. And so over the past 3 years, we've made great efforts to go out and consult with rural communities to see what the needs are and what was the potential of making changes to allow more people these licenses to do animal production. And we heard loud and clear that's what communities wanted to do. We put together the Select Standing Committee of Fish, Farms and Food. First time that an agriculture committee had toured in 16 years. Actually, they went and talked to communities. They went to abattoirs. They went and talked to people about what they wanted as far as meat production in British Columbia. And again, they may put forward recommendations. So I can tell you that there will be news on this in the coming days, and I think that people in rural BC will be quite happy. But while we're talking about meat production, we have incredible farmers. We have poultry farmers all around the province. I've spent a lot of time getting to know the meat production system, and I think it's a very trusted system. And the more choices that we give our consumers, more choices we give our chefs, the better it will be for our province. And it really will help us become more resilient. But I just wanted to give a hello to some poultry farmers up in Salmon Arm who have spent a lot of time educating me on the poultry industry. And I don't know if they're watching today, but I sure appreciate the knowledge that they've given me. Okay, so we have a question specifically for Ned. It's from Rachel from Rossland. Small farms provide the majority of locally produced food in the southern interior. How does he intend to support small farms moving forward?
Oh, thank you, Rachel, for that question. It's a great one. And I'm proud to say we will only support small farms, but of course, medium and large farms, depending on the crops, are also part of our menus. I was just visiting some small farms up in Armstrong yesterday, a small chicken farm. Andrea Gunner from Rosedown Farms, or Rosebank Farms, I'm sorry, and she was just fantastic. And we'll be looking forward to having her chicken on our menus. You know, for me as a chef, what I'm always trying to do is to continue to reduce the length between me and my farmers. We have a great farmer, Jordan Marr from Unearthed up in Kelowna, who will support us with vegetables. We have Jerome from Medley Organics over in Summerland, who will support us with some incredible vegetables. We have some spectacular small-scale farmers here on the Naramata Bench and down into the South Okanagan. So, you know, it takes a lot of digging. It takes as much digging as you want, literally and figuratively digging, to find and build those relationships. It's like great friendships. You got to work at them. And for me as a chef, my food is only as delicious as the relationships that I have. And so I think, you know, I've been cooking now for 30 years. I look forward to the next 30 as I continue to develop those relationships. And I wanted to say about the Young Agrarians program. I actually have a fabulous story right here in Naramata, Madison and Aaron from Puzzle Grass. And they are actually two young women who are basically being mentored by a farmer who's been there for 55 years, who has given them a long-term lease of 15 years. And we've committed to invest in their crops before they go in the soil and then reap the benefits if it's a good year, and work with them if it's maybe not such a great year. So it really is sort of riding that proverbial wave season to season to season.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'm really glad to hear that connection was made. For the last 2 years, we have been holding a conference called Every Chef Needs a Farmer, Every Farmer Needs a Chef. And under the conditions this year, it looks like we probably won't be going ahead with that in a physical way, but we are trying to figure out how to continue making those matches between farmers and chefs right across the province in a virtual way. And so we're starting to talk about how to set up a database to do the same job that conference did. But I can tell you, for many, many consumers, if they're able to see a farmer like Parm, to meet a chef like Ned, when they're going out, they're going into a restaurant, they're ordering something where they can actually see that they have some way of identifying where their food is coming from that makes them feel like they're doing a great thing by ordering it, to know that they're contributing to the greater economy that way. It's the best thing. And so these relationships, It's the unfortunate part about what's happened with the pandemic, because the relationships and the face-to-face meetings that I value so much as Minister of Agriculture, but I know our consumers value and our chefs value and our farmers value. We're going to have to figure out new ways to make those connections, because it's extraordinarily powerful when you understand where your food is coming from. So we've got another. This one's coming from Facebook. April asks, in BC's food self-reliance report produced by Food Secure Canada, it's estimated that BC farmers produce 48% of all food consumed in BC. Based on 2001 stats, that's from 2001. Is that going to be enough if predictions about California's suffering agriculture come true? Parm, do you want to take a crack at that?
I think as we spoke, the diversity of crops that we're able to produce here, especially let's just take a look at the Fraser Valley. It's 100 miles long, maybe 30 miles wide, and just imagine, from all the berry crops and the livestock that is produced here. I would feel very strongly and confident that we're able to manage and have food security around that to be able to supply to British Columbians.
Absolutely. Well, when you look at the Fraser Valley, for example, you see the amazing rich soil that is in that valley. You look at the Delta lands, it is extremely rich. You move up through the Okanagan, Vancouver Island. The one advantage we have in our province is that we've got this unique topography and this diversity of geography. And so the soils that we see allow us to grow just about anything that we want. And as we engage with people and make sure that we're getting new generations and new faces into agriculture, one of the things I think that is making people much more interested is their new relationship with food. And a pandemic, of course, is awful, but it has helped people understand how important our province's food system is. And so I always try and look for a silver lining. And so that's what I'm going to take from this, is that we will see a new generation of people understanding and wanting to understand more what our own agricultural capabilities are. Now, when I say that we've got this amazing base to grow food, a lot of that is captured in the agricultural land reserve. And so 5% of our province, only 5% of it, has the capability of growing food. And that's why we have this amazing land use. Tool called the Agricultural Land Reserve. And so when we think about the reasons why we want to strengthen the ALR and make sure that we're protecting it for food growing for future generations to come, it makes the work, although it's very difficult work and often contentious work, but we are making plans and holding on to this land, putting it in production for the generations we'll never meet. It's for our children and our children's children. And so the work that we do on that is critically important. We've done a lot of things to strengthen the Agricultural Land Reserve, and we are looking at new ways to protect it and also new ways to use it. And so some of the traditional areas that we're growing certain crops, due to climate change issues, etc., aren't growing those same type of crops. So how can we use technology? How can we use new growing methods to change the ways we're addressing what we're growing on the ALR. I know up in the Okanagan, Ned, cherries are going farther and farther north just because of the way climate is changing. And I have met incredible farmers from northern parts of our province that are growing things that you could never imagine. And so as our climate changes, we are opening up these new areas of the agricultural land reserve that we haven't really used before. And so I think that's an exciting thing. But Parm, you live right in the middle of the agricultural land reserve in the Fraser Valley. Talk about how important it is.
I just want to also go back a little bit and just what you're talking about. A good example, blueberries. They only grew in Richmond because of the deep acid soils, because that's what cranberries and blueberries, they're acid-loving plants. And it was only with the change of technology that when they were able to acidify mineral soils, that we're able to diversify and break out of that region. And you look at blueberries now, they grow all the way from Chilliwack, all the way into Delta. I mean, a lot of those soils that grew field crops. Cloverdale, I was going to mention Cloverdale, the diversity of crops that Cloverdale grew, the black muck soils, everything from celery to from carrots to onions, so many different varieties of vegetables. Unfortunately, it was under NAFTA that we couldn't compete, and it was done away with. And that land is now taken up with blueberries mostly. But yeah, the region that we're in, the diversity that we have, the opportunities that we have are so great. And I think you folks, the way you're strengthening the ALR land system and allowing the young generation to come into it to avail themselves of the new opportunities that are available are great.
Yes, the advantage we have because of the ALR, we begin to see that more and more as food security becomes more and more important. And it's amazing that it was put in place so many decades ago, and that foresight. They were talking about now. They were talking about the generation that we're in, of course, and our concerns around food security, but also into the future. So,
Minister, if I could quickly to maybe just chat briefly about my friends in the BC seafood industry. Of course, innovation is extraordinary in that industry, whether it's the harvesters, growers, cultivators, and beyond. My friends at Vancouver Island University are working hard on seafood and seafood innovation. And as we continue to look at climate change and overfishing being a challenge within that space, we have to look to how innovation will play a role in how we harvest, where we harvest, when we harvest, and then, of course, what we're also able to grow. And so, the fishery and the aquaculture space, whether it's the shellfish industry and beyond, are certainly important drivers of our economy here in rural communities, whether you're talking about farmers or fishers. And certainly as a chef, I love the opportunity to celebrate, quote unquote, sustainable seafood, traceable seafood, of course, ocean-wise recommended seafood, but really working within those industries to have access to that fish, whether it's the hake fishery, the halibut fishery, the shrimp fishery, the tuna fishery, the salmon fishery. Oh my goodness, there's so much delicious things. And let's not forget all the sea vegetables that grow, and there are 10,000 edible plants that we could also have on our dinner plates in the future. So innovation in the seafood industry is also extraordinary.
That is so true. And I've got great interest in the shellfish industry, a very sustainable industry in itself, and has potential to grow. And one of the disappointing things about what's happened over the last few months with the restaurant industry being shut down because of the pandemic. A lot of our oyster farms, the restaurant industry was their big market. And so the effects of the pandemic are far and wide, but we need to, as consumers, I think, educate ourselves in how to still access those amazing products and potentially try them at home, or as restaurants open up now, start ordering off the menu, specifically around BC products. And I do like oysters, but I have to say I really love clams. And those are all the things that you normally would find in the restaurant industry or in a seafood case in a grocery store. But you can also, with this e-commerce program that we've come up with, we're encouraging seafood producers to also have their products available online for consumers to purchase. I know that as soon as we put the information out, we did have a tuna fisherman contact us around tuna that he catches here in British Columbia and provides it frozen to consumers. So there are so many possibilities. And that's our job as government, I think, is trying to figure out how to support all the creative entrepreneurs that are involved in food, fish, and food processing, beverage processing. So I think
I call shellfish Mother Nature's real fast food.
Yeah, that is true. It's like literally 5 minutes to have some amazing clams steamed up with a little bit of lemon and some garlic or maybe some white wine. BC
beer, BC wine, absolutely.
I'm starting to get hungry. So I think that was the last question. And it was a great round of questions, a lot of diversity there. And I can't tell you how I appreciate the time that you've spent with us, both of you. And of course, Nigel, who's been working so hard there on the screen too. We have seen over the last 3 months, a situation that we certainly didn't expect. And I can't thank the agriculture industry enough, the restaurant industry, seafood industry, the processing industry. Can't thank you enough for being brave and courageous to try and get through this incredibly difficult time. You're very important to our economy. You're important to our communities right across the province. And I think this groundswell of support that you are seeing from consumers as they realize that more and more, I hope you can feel that love, because your resilience and your ability to adapt is something that I am incredibly proud of. And I think you're going to see people being very loyal to BC products in the future. So that's it for our time. I thank you very much. I thank everybody who joined us. And next time we're going to talk about...
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.